There's usually a title every year or every few years that tries to do something a bit different, whether it's in how it presents its world, story, or gameplay mechanics. Sometimes it's a combination of all three. The Sinking City was definitely a game that caught my eye with its use of investigations within a Lovecraft-inspired setting. As I played the full game, I began to realize that it reminded me of a game that came out last year. Vampire was a unique RPG that came out last year and very much strived to put the player in the shoes of a vampire. They did this through its gameplay mechanics, and I very much appreciated it. Since vampires thirst for blood, the developers sort of wanted the players to experience that craving and want to thirst for something within their game. The developers took the idea of feeding on someone and used that as a bonus for experience points for the player. The player could feed on many characters, and this could result in massive experience points that are granted to them. When you did this, you almost felt like you wanted to do it again because you got stronger at a faster rate, similar to how a vampire desires to feed. But feeding on people had consequences to the world and could close off certain side quests. This was a very different and unique experience. Vampire did things right while also having many flaws, and this is where I draw my comparison to The Sinking City. The Sinking City does feature some very interesting gameplay mechanics, and they do a good job with them, while having many areas that they could improve upon. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for The Sinking City. The Sinking City focuses on investigations, exploration, and gunplay.
There's something in the pocket.
You play as Charles Reed, and he is a private eye. You will spend a substantial amount of your time doing investigations. The investigations feature many different elements that work to immerse you into this detective-like experience. Part of the investigations will involve you talking to many different people, questioning them, and sometimes making decisions that might alter your story. Another aspect is how you will need to search the crime scenes and environments to find different objects to interact with to obtain more information. Sometimes you will find notes that will give you a lead or objects that require you to look a bit deeper at them. Following your observation of the crime scene, you will then be prompted with a few random events that you will need to put into sequence so that you can figure out what really happened there.
Time to figure this out.
We don't have time to pick it. Stand back.
Grab the papers. Smash the rest.
I fatah.
Burn it all. Make sure you get the adverts.
Several men broke into the expedition headquarters. What they didn't smash, they burned. The archives, even the newspapers.
Along with all this is how you can use an ability to sort of see through objects or find other hidden clues. This helps when you find objects that give you a glimpse into the past right before you got there. Another aspect is how you will need to actually look up for where you need to go for your next destination. The game allows you to visit many local buildings and review information within their archives. Within these archives, you can find more information that will point you into the direction of your next lead. For example, if you need to find similar crimes to the one you just saw, or need to find an individual, you will look them up in their respective archives so you can find that information. The game will provide you with hints so that you know you need to research a certain topic. I very much want to praise the investigation aspects of the game. Many of the pieces that make up this experience are very simplistic, but they have you doing stuff that you would expect to do as a detective. And the game treats you like an adult. If you find information on a building you need to investigate, it isn't marked on your map, but rather they give you an address that you need to find, and the same goes for whenever you need to research something. This can lead to some frustration as you just want to progress with the story, but there's a lot of satisfaction and appreciation in how the game treats you like an adult. One last thing I want to make note of is when you find different clues, you will reach different deductions from them, and sometimes there are different choices that you can go about this. Choosing to forgive a criminal that was forced to commit a crime, or finding a way to then frame the individual who made that guy do that crime. There's a decent level of choice here, and it's really rewarding, as you're doing all the pieces that then lead up to that choice. The investigations take up the bulk of the experience, with a secondary focus on combat. There will be instances where you'll be faced with armed foes or monsters that you need to defeat. As you progress throughout the game, you will gain an even bigger arsenal. You get pistols, a bolt-action rifle, along with a Tommy gun and a very useful shotgun. You can use some throwables and traps against them as well. You only have a fixed amount of supplies, so you'll want to make sure to keep an eye on your inventory so that you can always craft more medkits and bullets. You will find many areas to loot for supplies. The shooting is more functional than something that really makes it stand out for this game. I will go into more detail when we talk about the flaws later. Since the game takes place within an open world, there is a decent amount of exploration to take part in. You can just focus on the main narrative if you so choose, but there's also a bunch of secondary activities to take part in. Many other civilians will need your help, and this could involve you doing optional investigations, collecting items, or defeating enemies. To help change up some of the regular investigations and combat are these brief underwater sections. These are more entertaining from a visual standpoint, as they are extremely linear and mostly play themselves. Like I said before, I think this game does a very good job at putting you in the role of an investigator. Anything that deals with the investigations is really good. I enjoyed finding new leads, and I like how the game didn't hold my hand and let me come to many of the conclusions. The story is really engaging as well. It did feel like you were continually trying to find the next breadcrumb on this twisted trail. The story doesn't really focus on the development of Reed as a character, but rather it focuses on the main mystery. He does see some growth through the actions and decisions you make along the way, and without spoiling anything, the story does give you a satisfying journey, but don't expect everything to be fully explained to you. Now I want to focus on the flaws. There are two big ones that you probably already noticed from this review, and it's the unstable frame rate and the consistent screen tearing. The frame rate will stutter when you are in the open world sections, along with being in some of the smaller buildings. Sometimes it feels like the stutters start because of loading, or it just feels like it isn't properly optimized for base game consoles. The screen tearing is consistent and very annoying. I can understand these being two areas that could annoy players, and while they did annoy me, I do feel like the good the investigations provided definitely outweighs the technical problems that this game has. I hope the frame rate is improved with patches, but we can only wait and see with that. As you are walking around the open world, there can be a lot of pop-in, and sometimes the world lacks a sense of liveliness to it with the people there. Sometimes they talk, and then sometimes they don't, and then sometimes if you wait for a bit, there's sort of this delayed talking. It feels odd and inconsistent. This flaw is particularly just more of a preference more than anything else, as I think the game would have benefited from having a smaller but denser open world. There are many sections where I needed to keep fast traveling to reach different parts of the map to proceed with the investigations. Maybe by having a denser open world, there could have been more optional buildings to explore. As I mentioned before, the shooting is functional, but it's something that could definitely be improved upon. Many of the weapons feel like they lack any sense of weight or impact when firing them. The pistols sound too soft, with the shotgun sounding just a bit better. But overall, the weapons lack that punch you would expect when firing them within this game. The melee looks silly, and you can definitely feel like you are blindly swinging your shovel around. It lacks precision, and it's really hard to judge distance when you're swinging it. As you buy the melee upgrades, the melee does get improved, but it's still clunky. The big flaws really come down to the performance issues with the frame rate and the excessive screen tearing. I do think the good outweighs the bad in this game, and I do think this isn't going to be a game for everyone, but it's one that I think everyone should try. The Sinking City is a unique, flawed, and memorable experience. The game puts a large focus on the investigations, and they are very enjoyable and engaging to do. Finding new evidence and searching for my next lead was always compelling. The shooting could use some improvement, but the shotgun and Tommy gun do help to make these sections a bit better. The exploration is pretty good, with a decent amount of areas to explore, side missions to then find, and then enemies to defeat. Sadly, this compelling experience does come with some technical flaws that might significantly hurt people's enjoyment with the game. This flawed but compelling game feels like a mix of an RPG, a detective game, and a modern open world game. The focus on the investigations definitely makes this one stand out from its contemporaries, as most big games have you focusing on killing everything you see, and The Sinking City asks you to use your head a bit more than just using your gun. For those that are interested in the game, I would highly recommend you try it out, and for those that are on the fence, I would wait for a sale, because maybe by then the technical aspects of the game might be easier to swallow, or hopefully they'll be fixed with future patches. Either way, do not let this game pass you by.